Welcome back to our Keep the Conversations Going festival. Up next, we have a little surprise with Mairead Folen and Mary Moynihan in conversation with each other. Can't wait for this one either.
Hi, I'm Mairead. I am the Artistic Director of Norup's Theatre Company based in Galway. Currently talking to you from Tunnel Theatre Bar because the last time I was on here, the internet in Connemara nearly died. So thankfully, the Town Hall staff were happy to have me here today.
And hi guys, hello to everybody. My name is Mary Moynihan and I'm the Artistic Director of the Smashing Times International Centre for the Arts and Equality. And I'm delighted to be here today with Mairead and Abigail and Kevin to be a part of this very interesting and exciting adventure. And really looking forward to chatting with Mairead and to talking about our work. Thank you.
So, Mary, I get I've only heard the name Smashing Times here and there, but I actually don't know what exactly you guys do. So, if you could give me a pitch me.
Okay. Smashing Times. We are an organisation that was founded in 1991, so it's actually our 30th anniversary this year. Can't believe we're around 30 years. And originally, the company was founded as a theatre company, and we were set up by a group of women artists who met at the Focus Theatre in Dublin. And I had been working at the Focus Theatre as an actor and director with the amazing Deirdre O'Connell. And Deirdre was my friend and mentor, and she ran this tiny theatre called the Focus Theatre that had a huge impact, I think, on Irish theatre and internationally. And Deirdre was Irish American, and she had trained with Lee Strasberg in the Lee Strasberg studio in the States. And apparently, she was destined for a brilliant career. Her roommate was Barbara Streisand. She was working with Marlon Brando and people like that. And she was an amazing performer. And she said she had a mission or a vision to come back to Ireland, that she wanted to train artists, actors in Ireland, introduce us to the Stanislavski system. And she saw, Lee Strasberg. Stanislavski was the founding father of actor training. And Deirdre felt that what was being taught in America was probably the Western approach, and she wanted to teach what she called the Eastern approach of her version of the Stanislavski system. So she came to Ireland, married Luke Kelly from the Dubliners, set up the Focus Theatre, and I was very lucky and fortunate to get involved and train with Deirdre. And it was through there that I met some amazing actors and performers, and we set up Smashing Times. And our aim originally was to firstly make work for and by women artists, and secondly, to bring theatre out of the traditional theatre spaces and to share theatre with the wider community. And that's what we do. We use the arts to promote social change. We're interested in human rights and equality and diversity. And initially, it was just working through theatre. So, for example, I worked for a long time in Northern Ireland using the arts for peace building and reconciliation. And then, because of that work, we were invited to work across Europe using the arts in different countries, looking at conflict resolution, working with migrant communities and refugee communities. And then we branched out into film. My original training is in theatre and in film, and we have worked for several years now in film. And we set up the Smashing Times. So we were originally theatre, then film. And then because the work kept becoming so diverse, we set up the International Centre for the Arts and Equality. And I suppose we have a passion for working collaboratively with all artists and for using our art to promote equality, human rights and diversity. So that's what we do.
Okay.
And I was going to say, Mairead, I'd love to know about your company and what you do, if you could maybe talk a little.
Yeah, so my company is only a wee baba, 6 years old. And so our ethos is basically to highlight pockets of society that are not normally represented in theatre on a normal basis, and we stage either original works or little unknown works, and So today we've done The Open Couple by Jerry Folen, Frank Arema, and Wake by Kay Tempest. No, Wake, sorry, Wasted from Kay Tempest. Wake by Deirdre Sullivan, and we're currently working on a production, Luke. So each show has a different theme. So Open Couple, obviously open relationships. What's the tip? Like what is the perfect relationship? Wasted was more if you're stuck in a rush, how are you going to get out of the rush? Because like Galway is known as the graveyard of dreams. Like you could kind of go in a cycle, and it's hard to break from the cycle. So, and then Wake is a feminist retelling of The Little Mermaid, and it dealt with domestic abuse. And Luke is based on, well, it is based on disability issues, but really, like in the core of it, but really is how people's perception, society's perceptions, can often skewers what a personality of a person, or in this case, a walking frame. So, like again, like I guess I'm like you in a way, like without realizing it, our work is to equality and human rights. I guess that comes from my background as an artist with disability, even though that is not the main. That's not the main thing that defines me. But I guess like looking closely at my work, I like I like to get audiences thinking outside of the box, because I often have to do that on a day-to-day basis.
I love the sound of that. It sounds amazing, Mairead. And it's really interesting, the similarities, isn't it, between the organisations.
Like, how do you feel about it? Like, because I notice like diversity and equality are like the buzzwords for the past 2 years, and it's like I know beforehand that it was hard to get conversations going because it wasn't the fashionable topic at the moment. But now it's like everyone's on about diversity and inclusion, and like it's good to have the conversations, but you kind of wonder like how long is this conversation going to last for, and will there be any action that comes out from these conversations?
Yeah, that's I would agree with what you're saying, because I think, for example, we would say in Smashing Times, we've been raising these issues for 30 years. And one of the things we would have said, and we would always consider ourselves a very successful company, but always as a company on the margins, or the issues we would have experienced over the years, trying to raise awareness of equality and diversity and human rights through the arts, is that the type of work we do is often invisible, and we would just keep doing our work. And we've worked with all different types of communities. You're out there doing the work on the ground, and I would constantly be saying, there's amazing work happening. Young people want to know about these issues. There is an interest. We need change. But why is nobody listening? Or why is there very few people listening? So that's up until the change that has happened. Up to that point, we often felt that the type of work organisations like our own were doing was getting funding from funders, not necessarily arts funders sometimes, which is a debate we need to have. I think that's starting to change. But also not getting the media coverage it needs. And so it's been great. There's been a sea change, and it's been great that there has been a swing to open up these questions and put them on the agenda. It's taken a long time, probably too long. And the one thing I would say, Mairead, is, because I think what you're saying is so spot on, is that these questions and these issues are on the agenda now, and it's not enough to just talk about them. And it's not enough to just have lip service, that we have to really look at what the future is. Like, for example, it's a lot of talk around diversity or inclusion is all about representation. And I think representation is really important, but it's a lot more than representation. It's about getting people it's about looking at who actually has the decision-making processes, who has the power, How do we influence and change power? So it's not enough to just suddenly bring people in. We also need to make sure that the people brought in have a say in the future of the arts. What type of art is made? What type of art gets funded? We have to question the power structures that cause inequality in the first place, and open up those questions and really ask the hard questions, if you like. And it's wonderful it's happening, but more needs to happen.
Exactly. It's like the whole trust issue. It's like, do the funders trust artists? Do the artists trust funders? It's a two-way street, and like they have to, like, we have to be able to learn to meet in the middle. Like for applications, artists always have to show they're worthy of funding. Like they can't research, like most often than not, they can't research or development without having to showcase. But like if you don't have initiatives like Gap Day or the initiative that I'm on next month, which is Artists at Work with Dublin Fringe, like if we're not given those initiatives to just play, just to research without having the pressure of showcasing at the end of the week or end of the day, then it's just let artists be artists and not business people.
Yeah, I'd love to know, because I agree with you. I think that what you're saying there is that it's really important that the voice of the artist is heard about what are the needs of artists, what are the needs of the artists from diverse backgrounds, to put that on the table. And I sometimes think that we need forums where artists aren't just listened to, artists are actually heeded, because there's a difference between giving your voice but then actually having your voice followed and those things put into place. But Mairead, I'd love to know more, because you've mentioned two things there: Gap Day and the Dublin
Artists at Work.
Fringe Festival, Arts at Work. I'd love to know more about that. That sounds really interesting.
So Gap Day, actually the initiative is opening up soon. So it's an initiative run by Liam Bell and Mermaid Arts Centre. So it's a very easy application. You just it's a very simple artist-friendly application where it just says why you want to have a Gap Day. You can just, if it just, you want to have a corner in an office space to look at window watch to get inspiration, it doesn't matter. Like as long as you have time for yourself to be an artist. So like, and then like with Dublin Fringe, I'm actually going to be here in the Town Hall Theatre. It's a whole week residency, just to do whatever I want, and there's no like, oh, what's the word I'm going to say? There's no demand for me to produce anything at the end. Like obviously I will want to show something, but it might not happen at the end of the week. It might happen in a few months' time. So I think if like organizations could do more of the initiatives, not just rely on Gap Day or Artists at Work, that it's a regular occurrence, then like the work that the artist will create might take longer, but it will be a lot stronger at the end result.
Yeah, no, it is really important to have that, isn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of noise going on here in my background. Because do you know something? I would say, Mairead, that's one of the reasons why I set up Smashing Times with some other artists, is that sometimes when we were working on our own, we would have these ideas about work, because in Smashing Times, like yourselves, we would, we've done Frankorama, so I'd love to have a chat with you about her, because I think she's an amazing playwright. But we've also done our own original work in Smashing Time. So we would work with communities or work with other artists to create original work in response to the themes we're working with. And we would be interdisciplinary, so we'd have theatre, film, music, different art forms. But it's very hard, I used to find, as an artist on my own, to put my ideas out there and wonder, are they good enough? Who do I bounce my ideas off? How do I get time to think about them? And how do I create original material? Because it can take weeks and months for ideas to ferment and grow and build. And that's what I loved about the company, was that we were a group of artists who came together, and we used to bounce off each other and take, I suppose, our gap days with each other when we weren't busy doing projects to try and develop our work. And that would be in collaboration. Now, I think it's nice to have time on your own as well. I think, to daydream and to dream is really important.
Like, it's just like, even like the project that I'm working on with artists, it started off as a flippant comment on Facebook about theatre ghosts. Then I woke up with a random poem in my head about a theatre ghost living in the theatre during COVID. And then that's when it came to an idea of, oh, what if there's a script out there that centers around arts workers and artists, that the work is central to the getting process. People that don't see their names on the posters, that everyone flicks over that page on the program. What are their stories? So what I'm going to be doing during my week here is going to be interviewing artists that their work is centered on the getting process, to get as much info as I can on their experiences on the getting process, and hopefully come up with a script after that.
That's amazing. That's really interesting, because that's your, do you know what I mean? You're in a way creating your own unique way of working, and you're following your own impulses and your own instinct around that. So that sounds really exciting.
Yeah, but again, it just like, it was serendipity. Like, it just happened to have, like, it all just happened to have that kind of linear thing, which is not normal. So it's great when that happens, but I know that realistically, it doesn't happen like that. You have to go searching, you have to go read scripts, you have to go talk to collaborators, see what's out there. Like, you always need to, well, I don't know. I always find like that I need to think, okay, what is the next project? How many years left does No Ropes have? Like, I can't, like, I'm always like, is this going to be the last show? Like, or like, I can't see not that I can't see myself, like, 30 years seems so far away that I don't know, like, what would happen.
Mairead, it feels like it was yesterday, so it does. It goes really quick. And yeah, I know what you mean. There's always that, there's two ways of looking at that, because in a way that's what the arts are like, isn't it? We're living from show to show, or from project to project, or grant to grant. So we live in that precarious space as artists and as companies. And there's a part of me sometimes thinks that we need to do something about that, around supporting artists and giving us more security and more protection and looking after artists, because that can be very tough on artists. And we've seen, because of COVID, how that can impact on artists who live in a gig economy or a project by project economy. It's very tough for artists. But I also think too, there's this interesting kind of dynamic that comes from not knowing what's coming next, if you like, and the excitement of wondering what the next project is. And what I would say to any company starting out like yourselves, I have always believed in the power of getting together with a group of people and making your own work. And I'm trying to find the phrase, follow your own path, and just trust and have faith and hope that what you're doing is always good enough, and just to keep doing it and to keep putting it out there. And that's what we did in a way. If I was to say, how did Smashing Times manage? We were a group of people who, we had an ethos. I think that's important. We all kind of had a kind of clear idea of what we believed in, using our art form for social change, but believing in the power of the arts and wanting to share that with the world. And the way I would work as an artist is, sometimes projects come to us, like you said it, Mairead. It's not that you sit down and say, I'm going to plan this now. It can be serendipity. It can be a chance meeting. It can be suddenly you hear something and you say, that really intrigues me, and your heart is drawn towards it, and you end up being pulled towards what your next project is almost. Because, you know, when I make art, the themes often come from what's in the world around me, and I'm drawn to something and I don't often question it, but I just know I have to explore this and I have to follow my instincts of where it's taking me, and usually you end up making a piece of art out of that. I don't know if that makes sense, Mairead, in terms of what is the
No, no, it
artistic
does.
process.
Yeah, because like I like so the script that like well the production hopefully be staged next year is based on disability issues, and as an artist like with disability, like people have been talking about it for years. Oh, Marie, you should write a script about your life as a disabled person. And I'm like, no, just no. Like as a first of all, I was like, I am not a writer. Like I've written short stories as a kid. That's it. And also I was like, how to write a biographical or autobiographical show without giving too much of you, and like kind of set yourself boundaries. But then it just like for years I've been like, no, I'm not doing this, and it just happened that there was this short festival in Galway that my friend was organising. He wanted like a 10-minute script from people with minorities, from minority communities. He asked me, I said no. But then a friend of mine wrote a script, asked me to dramaturg it, and when I was reading it, I got an idea for my own script, which basically main character of the script is Luke, the walking frame. So yeah, you are hearing my story as a disabled person, but it's through the eyes, through the hands of the walking frame. So Luke is like he's like he's a good mechanism to portray disability issues without being like too vulnerable. Like like I'm able to put down stories that I was like, okay, he's in that story. Oh, I can't talk about that story because he wasn't involved. So it's just kind of good filtration system, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like you're finding a mechanism as you go along that's supporting how you work.
Yeah, but again, it's like it's only Luke and this one and the artist's work. I don't know what the name is. Called Getting for the moment, but that's the only time that like is original work by me. The rest of it is either I bought the license to it or I collaborated with a playwright. So this is fully me, and I don't like. I'm not sure if that is going to be the future of no ropes, because sometimes it's just easier to just buy the copyright and just direct it.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. You know, this conversation is bringing up a lot of things for me. Like, there's so many things here because I'd love to ask you at some point to go even further and talk about what you think should be the future for how we promote disability within the arts, or how we promote work for artists with disabilities, or how we raise awareness of the issues and all of those things, because definitely more needs to be done. Because, you know, I would imagine for that, or working with any diverse group, it's not going to be traditional patterns are going to make it happen, or traditional ways of working, or traditional structures. So how do we change the structures that are there to help us, all of us, become artists? And I think sometimes it's limited.
I think for me, every budget out there needs to push an access, and it's not just disability as well. It's like for artists who are parents as well, like childcare costs. Like I an active friend of mine whose mother, like she said recently, it would be great if there was such a access requirement in the budget already implemented, and that if the show was on tour, that there would be kind of that they would job share the role. Like it would cost more, but realistically, it would be more beneficial for the production if all the cast and crew were comfortable in the surroundings. Like even like I know a technician, he literally had to tell production before that that he couldn't do that long of a run because he needed a break, and that as a result of that, production run was shortened. But like not a bad thing. I mean, like everyone got the break that they deserved, and that's the problem with this sector is all or nothing sometimes. Like you're in a drought, but then when you get jobs and jobs and jobs, you're always on the go. Like there is burnout, and like I know conversations during the pandemic, during lockdown, they're like, "Oh, this is not going to happen. We're going to be more mindful of ourselves." But again, with the lockdown gone, we're back to our old habits of burning out, like because we don't know we don't know any better. We don't know how to be mindful of each other.
Yeah, no, I think everything you're saying makes sense, because you've just mentioned a whole load of very practical things like, childcare, putting access into your theatre budget from the very beginning. Because I even know in Smashing Times for years, we were always aware of that option, but we were very slow to use it. We needed, and sometimes you start asking questions, how do we use it? How do we bring that in more? These are the conversations that every theatre and every arts organisation needs to be having. And I'd love to have them in the wider arts community, so that we're changing the structures. Like you said, doing a show for a long period of time might suit some people, but it's not possible for others. So it's being aware of all of these things, and you know, and I also think, Ray, too. I wonder, could I go back to something you said earlier about you didn't write yourself? Because I know I used to go through that when I was younger, where I always had these ideas about what I wanted to write about, but I never had the courage to believe I could do it. And I sometimes think, well, I know when we started off, we were making theatre that was outside of the traditional theatre space, and there was very few role models, companies we could look to and say, oh, look, they're working in a different way. We like that. Let's start doing that. So we ended up making a lot of it up as we went along. We were responding in the moment to the work, the situations we were living in or what we needed as artists. And I would love to see more artists, and particularly I have to say more women artists, writing about or talking about or documenting the way we make work and how we make work and what way we want to make work, if that makes sense. And that can bring in
Yeah,
disability, it can bring in ways, but I think gender, all of those, I would love to see those conversations open up, because we talk about this interdisciplinary work and different ways of working, but I really do think we need more conversations around it.
yeah, and I think the way that the funding system works kind of prevents us from doing that, because we have to write what well people write with what they think that the funding system needs at this particular time, and is and then like if you get like you might get arts participation funding, but really you want to be in mainstream theatre funding, and it's just like I don't know. For me, arts participation is great for a while, I, but I feel that if that like these minorities, like they need to be put into mainstream theatre, because the public needs to see their stories repeated back to them. Like we need to see who we see in the queue of Aldi, or that like we don't want to see the same people on. We don't want to see the same type of stories on stage the whole time. It's like why why do you have an Irish person acting as a Spaniard? Why not hire a Spanish person to act like a character from Spain? Like it's just it's just like there's tons of out there. Like Brother Gather and Mother Tongues are like 100% proof that these people do exist. These artists do exist. All you have to do is like do an open call. Be exclusive in your open call. Tell us, like, be transparent as possible. Like, what supports you can give to artists? What kind of, like say that you want to show Irish society of today, rather than like the normal white middle class cisgendered person. Like it's boring.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is. Well, it's very interesting because, again, you said something practical. Wouldn't it be great if there was grants we could apply for? Very simple grants, simple to fill in, no loops to jump through, where the funding is open funding. So it's about the artist going and saying, this is the way we want to work. This is the type of project we're doing. So we're not trying to make our projects fit the criteria to some extent of the grant funding that is there, if that makes sense. There should be, like, for example, the Arts Council should have more funding like that, where it really is, it's an open call, where the artists are coming up with the ideas, really, and saying, I know we do come up with the ideas for the content, but for the structure of the work and the type of work, that should come from artists as well, I think.
And the programming as well. Like, like TFNU should contact the artists, should have a consultation with them. What would you like to see programmed? Or even like, the audiences, what would you like to see programmed in your local arts centre?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, but I think, okay, much as we complain about Arts Council and other funding bodies, it's the government as well that has to be accountable for it, because like the government only see boxes and figures, and they don't understand artists. Like, it's obvious from like what we see lately, like with 40,000 allowed in GA matches and what 50 people in some theatre venues. Like, they don't understand artists, but yet take away their Netflix, take away their music, take away their books. Like, they'd be screwed.
You're the second person to say that to me this week. The comparison between the 40,000 going to Crow Park compared to the numbers that sometimes we get in theatre. So it's interesting. Now I think the GAA are brilliant organisation, and it's great what they do. But and I also think, say for example, the Arts Council, they have an equality, human rights, and diversity policy, and I think fair play to them for having that, because it's quite unusual for an Arts Council to have a human rights policy, and class and all of those things are in there. So I think that's really good. But I would say that, maybe in a simple way, if you look at sport, look at the amount of coverage it gets in the media. I always go back to the media. The sport gets huge coverage in the media, okay? And the GAA are a brilliant organisation because they're on the ground. They're working in communities. They're liaising with communities. That's what a lot of arts organisations, you just said it about your own arts organisation. You want to talk to the public to say, what type of theatre do you want in your community? What do you want to see? So arts organisations are engaging with their communities, but we need to get more coverage. And because I think one thing in the arts we're up against is, unless it's celebrity, it doesn't get covered. So we've got to move away from this celebrity idea.
And then there's not only that, but then there's like, but then like, I don't know, I could probably gonna be shot for saying this, but there's elitism with the theatre sector, as in the commercial productions. Yeah, they bring in funds. Yeah, they are like not as good standard as, I don't know, say, big theatre, big, epic style, Brecht break show, but get the punchers in. And yeah, I mean, it's not like Mrs. Brown, like, even though I hate the show, they bring the money in, but they are catering for that audience. And I think sometimes like artists, they can feel that, oh well, that company is doing that, they shouldn't. But if they look at it another way, yeah, they are doing that show, but have you realized that they're using those funds for that show to put on a kick-ass epic production? So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
well,
if
you
I'm
see, I think, yeah, I think there's room for all types of arts and all type of theatre, big scale and small scale. And you know, I suppose what I think is that, for example, I'm very much into small to medium sized arts, because I think in society we see this huge change in society where small businesses are going, and it's all about global corporations, it's all about big. That's been stopped to a certain extent, or we've been asked to reflect on it because of COVID, where I love the fact that we're possibly being pushed back as artists and arts organisations to smaller, intimate shows with smaller audiences. I think there's something very magical in that, and I'd love to see more support for that going forward. Yeah, you can have your big shows, they're brilliant, people love them, I love them, but I also think we equally have to cherish and nurture the small scale, intimate work, the live performance that can happen on the ground. And that's really important, and that just needs to be supported much more.
Yeah,
I'm always, yeah, it just needs, because Mairead, if the one thing I'm always saying to people is, for example, in the Arts Council's 10-year action plan, they dropped in this plan support for, or they do support them, but it's not in there. The main focus is on independent artists, which I agree with. But I equally think you have to fund small to medium-sized arts organisations. And that needs to be put back into the arts programme as a priority, to fund the independent artists as well as the small to medium-scale arts organisations who are going out and doing the work on the ground.
oh totally. Like, because I mean, think about it. That's where everyone came from. Like Gary Hines, Ramsock. That, like, I can't think of anyone else at the moment. But like, even like, it's just like we all have like done zillion jobs in small shows. Like, you're the director, you're the producer, you're the production manager, you're stage manager, you're everything but the actor. And even that's the way how No Ropes work at the moment. Like, technically, I'm there. Well, there was only one of me, but now there's like a production manager who I can't pay for all the time, but he's amazing. But like, there's only two of us, and well, we can't. I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I'm just saying we're trying to do everything, and the Arts Council and funding bodies suspect that the small fish are able to do the same amount, are expected to have the same quality of work as the big fish, and to do it in the same time frame, and often with smaller amounts of funds than that big fish will get, because you still have to build your reputation.
Yeah. No, I think all of that is true. Do you know, like, I always loved Footsbarn Theatre Company. I don't know if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah,
They're a French. I remember the first time I saw them, I was just blown away. But I actually think their philosophy is, I hope I'm right about this, but this idea that if you're an artist or performer, you must help out with everything else. So they all share their roles and their tasks. And it really is that idea of the ensemble, like what you're talking about.
yeah,
Um, it can be a lot sometimes. And yes, we do need more support and more time. And the arts need more funding. We've gotten increases because of COVID, but we need a lot more because the arts have a really important role to play in society. But I love that idea of the shifting, changing roles within the art world as well, which I think is interesting.
And I guess that's where I'm coming from with this new project, is that like people don't realize how important that these arts workers, that they're named on the poster, how important they are to the production. Like without them, the production wouldn't really have legs, because if you don't have lights, if you don't have set, if you don't know, if you don't have a stage manager, production manager, all you are is just like random people standing on a blank stage, and the full magic of a theatre production won't be there. They're the glue of the theatre production. And like I think of, like, funding bodies before the Agility Award, they have forgotten about these arts workers. They could never apply for funding because their work was never deemed art. And so they were dependent on the likes of us to get project funding in order to be able to pay them. So
yeah, there's a knock-on effect. You're very conscious, Mairead, of the people behind. You know, there's so many people go into making a live performance or a production, and everybody is important. And it's about opening up that. But doesn't get back to this idea, you know, because again, the things you're saying that I would particularly be interested in is around the idea of whose story we tell and the type of stories. You know, as an artist, I'm very interested in telling hidden or forgotten stories. Now, I do a lot of that around women's stories in history. So I would make plays and films telling the stories of from you know, women from World War II who were involved in the resistance against Nazism, or women who, you know, would have been involved in the 1916 to 1923 revolutionary period in Ireland. And I think today, because I might get a bit of a plug in, guys, we run the Dublin Arts and Human Rights Festival, and that festival is running from the 15th to the 24th of October. And one of the projects we're doing, which is called The Art of Rights, and it's a carnival, I suppose. It's about looking at arts and rights, but we're doing small scale, intimate, outdoor live performances in a park in Dublin. And as part of that, we have an open call out to people, particularly from Rathfarnham and South Dublin County Council area, but to everybody. We're looking for people to send us in stories of people who have inspired you or who have encouraged you to make change for the better in your life and in the world. And, you know, this idea of care and compassion and how we tell those stories. So we're go and check our website, www.smashingtimes.ie, for the festival events and for the project The Art of Rights, which is funded by the Arts Council in the Open. And I think the idea, and again, it's very similar to you, Mairead, we're hoping to gather in stories, and then the stories are used as part of the artistic creation, which can be, so we're telling our stories as well as other people's stories, which can be very exciting. And that's similar to the way you work.
Yeah, like, do you feel that, like, there is pressure sometimes to put on something that is, like, what's in fashion at the moment? Like, it's a topic, like a political topic that's in fashion, or something about diverse that's in fashion at the moment, or like.
Do I think that? I definitely think it's very hard. Like, for example, I'll give you an example in our work, and I can't prove this. So this is anecdotal, and whether I should be saying it or not, but I say it anyway. At a certain point, we, you know, Smashing Times over the years, because of the type of work we do with communities, we go off and look at different ways of getting funding. So we look at how we diversify our funding. And I know at a certain point we became very interested in the whole thing of gender and gender equality. And we started to layer that into our grant applications. So we would tend to come up with projects and then go look for funding, as opposed to the other way around. That's not to say that sometimes if a grant, look at what you have in your arsenal and say, what can we adapt here? But I definitely think for a period of time, we got a lot more rejections in the grants we were putting out at that time. This was about 12 years ago. And I'm convinced it was because the theme wasn't sexy or wasn't considered in at the time. So
Yeah.
in a way, that's maybe answering your question, that sometimes that can happen, yes. And it may be important to have room for that certain themes, like, for example, we do have to look at diversity at the moment. That has to happen, without a doubt. And certain things have to be pushed. But it just, again, it's just making sure that not to the extent where it's pushing out other areas of work. And Mairead, that probably gets back to the idea of funding for artists, where we're also equally funded to come up with our own ideas and our own themes that we want to work on, which may not be fashionable at the time.
Yeah, like I found not necessarily in Ireland, but like TheatreMakers in say the UK that have a disability, that their work is always dealing with disability, or disability led theatre organisations always has work dealing with disability. And like, yeah, okay, disability is, I am disabled, whatever, but that's not what makes me. It's like a whole layer of other stuff. But like, I'm conscious of the fact that like before the script Luke, I didn't get as much funding for other projects, but I did for the development of Luke. And it makes me worried that the fact that I'm getting the funding now because diversity is the hot topic, and it's like, okay, well, what will happen when I apply for funding with under another topic in the future, which is going to happen? Like, what will happen then? Like, is it going to be going back to the same, a few pennies of funding, or will my work be recognized in its own right as good quality work, rather than, look at Mairead, she is a disabled artist, we must take the disabled box in her funding thing. I mean, I'm probably shooting myself in the foot here, but it is a concern.
If that's your experience, and if you're sensing that, it's important to express that and to put those points out there, because like, yes, you're an artist first and foremost, and having the right to be an artist is really important. So I think, Mairead, that for me gets back to the whole question of, let's push representation, definitely. So let's put the different faces and the different stories out there in all layers of the arts and society, okay? But equally, that's not enough, because what you're saying, the fear of what you're saying, that it might go back to the old way and then suddenly it's not on the agenda anymore, that's where it gets back to changing the power structures. So we need representation, but the people who need to be represented also need to have a say in how things are run going forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so that's
and
the question. Do that. How do we share power or challenge?
And they need conversations. I'm usually the go-to person when there's a whole disability conversation talking about in the arts. Well, recently I've been anyway. But the book can't stop me. We need to bring other artists with the same background as me, as in to create a legacy. Because when I'm not there anymore, who's going to continue the conversation?
Yeah. Who's coming down the line? Yeah. It's really, really important. So I think you're right to bring it up, and I think keep talking about it, and we all need to talk about it, and we all need to figure out how we're going to make this change happen. Because you don't want it to go back to the way it was. We want change to happen, and theatre will be more diverse, and the arts in the world will be more. The more diversity, the more exciting, the more vibrant, the more change happens. We need more of that.
Then more like inclusive as the audience feel, and then there'll be 40,000 people coming to theatre, as well as 40,000 going to GA matches. Because they will see their stories on stage.
Yeah. I would agree with that, because I think, it's the chicken and the egg, isn't it? So, we all need to write our stories. Everybody, I'm always telling everybody, write your story down. I think it's really important. And everybody, Smash and Dials have often done storytelling workshops, and you'll go into a group and they'll all say at the beginning, I don't have a story to tell, or I have nothing to say. And you'll always find, if you do a theatre workshop, by the end of it, everybody has something really interesting going on. We all have a story to tell. And one thing I would love to see, Mairead, is more support and encouragement for young artists and artists like yourself to find ways to see, can I be a writer? Can I create new theatre? Can I work through different ways of working with other people to create the vision I want for the arts, in terms of the structures, but also in terms of the stories and the artwork and the creativity we're expressing? That's really important, isn't it?
Yeah, and also kind of a buddy system as well. Like, what's the pitfalls of starting a company? Make sure you get insurance. Who are the right people to work with? What's the correct thing for that particular production? Who are the journals you need to contact? How to get reviews, which is nearly impossible these days. But
that gets back to media, yeah.
Yeah, again, it's just like we all have to help each other, and it all has to kind of come from the bottom up rather than the top bottom. It's just like it needs to be kind of a amalgamation of thoughts and ideas, and we all want the same goal. And at the moment, it's a very much us them. So it has to become a us. If that makes sense.
Yeah. When you say us them, what do you could you tease that out a bit more?
So it could be like the funders, the venues, or even like bigger companies, like the more established, that's like, I'm not worthy of you type of thing. It's like, at the end of the day, like I totally fall in trap of imposter syndrome, and like it's only recently that I realized that like everyone has the same insecurities about their show. It's like every company goes through the same problems, like coming up towards the show. Okay, so like there's some pitfalls that you can escape through experience, but every company, every actor has the same insecurities, whether they're just a Lear graduate or Ramsock or like Marie Mullins. They all are. Yeah.
They're what? What were you saying there?
They're like, they all have the same desire, the same insecurities. That like once you start a conversation like we're having now, like you said it yourself earlier, there's so many similarities between us. But like quite often, like people that are starting out, they feel afraid to talk to the more established artists or companies because they are not worthy. They have that mental thing of, we are not worthy, we should not be in the same space as you.
Okay, we should, we should put out a Mairead, a call from this talk. We should put out a call to say, for example, your company and our company, well, I can speak for us. We want to put it out there. Come and talk to us if you want to know how we did it or what we did or what would let's find a platform to start sharing where we can nurture and support each other. And I always think, I certainly would say in Smashing Times, if anyone approaches us, come to us. Sometimes maybe we're very busy coming up to the festival, but once the festival is over, we'd love to meet with young companies. We'd love to meet with your company, with other companies, and say, let's share. These are what we went through. This is how we did it. How are you doing it? Let's talk about those fears and insecurities. And I agree with you. Everybody has them. And in a way, if we documented more the way we work and how we work, we'd have more pathways to follow, if you like, while we're also making up our own work.
And it's the whole thing of the open door policy. Yeah, fine. Great to have an open door, but where is the open door? Like, if you say you have an open door, and I'm saying this to everyone that says it, you have to come out to the open door for people to see you.
Well, we'll have to look at how we do that. Do you know, in Smashing Times, we set up
I'm not just talking about like you guys. I'm just talking about like every person that says we have an open door. Again, it's like people don't know where that open door is. Just you need to be active about it. Like as you said, create an open call. There's not that many organizations that do that at the moment.
Yeah. Make the door real. Put the door somewhere.
Yeah.
And make it happen. I was going to say, in Smashing Times, we set up a network for the arts and human rights. We set it up, I don't know, about 2 years ago, but we're only nurturing it now. And we're working this year with 16 artists as part of a project called State of the Art, which is actually looking at the state as a violator and protector of human rights. But the idea was to bring artists together to nurture and for us to share. How do you make work around arts and equality? Because oftentimes we're making the work independent of each other and we're not quite sure. So we love this idea of bringing artists together to say, well, who inspires you, or how do you work, or what can we share here? What are your needs? Just to open doors, if you like. But I think, Mairead, what I'd love to do as part of the network is this idea of a real open door and create a space, a forum where we can all come together to talk about these types of things when we need to. Because it is interesting.
Yep.
And is for it.
Even like the established organizations and artists, they will learn something new from the emerging artists, because the emerging artists will have an outsider opinion. They will see the cracks that the established artists and companies are falling into. They're able to show new techniques that organizations might be stuck in a rut. Like they don't know they know what they want to do, but they don't know how to implement it. And it's a case of you can't teach an old dog new tricks.
But why do we use phrases like mainstream and established? And I know established and emerging, but high art, low art, arts participation is over in one corner and art for the public is over in another corner. There's all these binaries that are set up around the whole art world that we really need to question. Like, for example, I think arts participation it's mainstream everywhere. It's not. Sometimes the most exciting artwork and the most professional artwork is happening by artists working with communities. And I also think that sometimes the most exciting artwork is happening on the edges. It's not happening in the centre or in the mainstream.
Again, it goes back to funding. It's a tick box exercise. How can you describe yourself in 50 words? Please, you can only tick 2 boxes to describe what those 2 boxes are. You have a list of 20 boxes. Take two. What are you? Like, it's not like it was before. Like, an actor was an actor, director was a director. Now there's artists who are making their own work, they're collaborating, because it's the only way to survive in Ireland at the moment. Is you have to create your own work, because if you're relying on pure just one type of work, then you're going to be broke.
Yeah, no, I do think we should have different ways of working, but I equally think too, we probably, the whole funding situation really has to be looked at of how artists are supported, because the arts were underfunded before COVID happened, and the impact has been huge. You know, in terms of COVID, some arts organisations have survived and done okay, and not been too impacted, where others have been hugely impacted. You know, particularly artists who are dependent on the gig economy and stuff. But I definitely think the whole support and funding structure for the arts needs a serious overhaul,
Totally.
because people need to be supported in making livelihoods out of working in the arts. And that has to
And
happen.
like the NCFA have made steps towards that. And like Catherine Martin's definitely listening to us. But it's again, what, she wasn't allowed to be put on the steering committee or some type of government committee recently to talk about arts. I might be wrong in the committee what the extra committee was, but she wasn't allowed to be on the committee for some reason. So again, it's prioritized of, you know, government's priorities. Arts are the last of their list. You know, they depended on us throughout the lockdown to keep themselves sane.
That's really interesting, because that, Mairead, gets back to, you know, I'm not aware of what you're talking about there in terms of a committee, but I think that gets back to the whole thing of who controls the arts and what's the policy governing the type of art that is made and how arts are funded. And that gets back to the question of what's the power structures that are currently in charge of the arts in Ireland. We really need to ask more questions around all of that, and probably be more radical in a non-violent way around how we promote the agenda of making sure the arts are put centre stage, because it definitely has to happen. And there's always the danger that there's a lot of talk about change, but how are we going to make sure it actually happens? And again, how do we get heeded in what we're saying? You know, like, for example, I always talk about the Arts Council. Why can't artists be voted onto the Arts Council? Or to have, not, I know the artists are on the Arts Council panel, but to have more of a say in how the Arts Council is run and to meet with government structures and talk about policy more, you know, so that is coming from the artists and communities, which is interesting. I think we have to wrap up. Sorry?
I guess it's like society's perception of an artist. Oh, it's not a real job. Oh, why do they expect to get, why should an actor get paid for like 2 hours work? It's the lack of understanding, and it's just like, we do as much work as a teacher. Like, we in fact are teaching people about issues, topics, about themselves through creative means. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I'm totally with you. We've got to sing more the praises of the arts.
Yeah.
I think we have to wrap up now, but I'd love to, just to finish up, Mairead, I'd love to know, how can people find out more about your organisation, or what do you have coming up next, or how can people get involved with your company?
So we're, well, You can email us at noropesteacher, lowercase, @gmail.com. We're on Twitter at noropesteacher. We're on Facebook, No Ropes Theatre Company. And we're on Insta kind of, but not really. I think we're at No Ropes _ theatre, I think. But yeah, if you, I have a Google form, on my social media, on our social media for any artist or art worker that is interested in being interviewed to talk about their experience with the get-in. It's on some social media. I'll re-share it that way, so on top of the list after this. But yeah, what about you? How can they contact you?
Well, through the website, it's I always say smashingtimes.ie, through the website. And like, we do have the festival coming up in October with a load of different arts organisations: Irish Modern Dance Theatre, Poetry Ireland, Frontline Defenders. So people can check out the programme. Will be going live over the next 2 weeks. And we have a number of projects. So we'll be doing on-site work in the Chester Beatty Library, in the Mill Theatre in Dundrum, and in Rathfarnham Castle Park. And then we have a lot of work. We're building a virtual gallery online for all the artists to showcase the work of the artists with us. So check us out and do get in touch. We always love to hear from people. And we just keep making our work, Mairead, don't we? And we've got to keep going. Yeah, the show goes on, so it does. I'd love to ask you one final thing. Why No Ropes? What is there a meaning behind the name of the
company? Okay. So years ago, I was in a acting course called Courtier College, and it was run by Max Hafter and Judah Higgins and Judah Wolf, and there's a Clough aspect to it. And so at the last class after the Clough, we were working with props. So we had a traffic cone, and those industrial blue ropes things. So we were putting three groups of three, and me and the two girls decided we do a reporter thing. So they used the microphone as a camera. They used the rope to tie me to them. So I was holding the rope on one end, the walker. They were holding onto the rope, and everything was perfect. When we were rehearsing it was grand. And then we were showing it for the rest of the class. For some bizarre reason, I don't know what happened. We still don't know what happened. That something must have pulled the wrong way. Either I did or they did, but I started falling. Like it when you're falling, it's like slow motion. You could see everything happen. So I fell. I was grand. I was laughing away. People were crying watching because they thought it really hurt, which made me laugh even more. And the next day, the administration rang to see was I okay, and I was like, yeah, grand, no bones broken. And she's like, okay, no ropes for you, Mairead. So it's stuck. Okay. How does smashing times get us in?
Well, we took, there was in 1991 I came across a book by Irish historian Rosemary Cullen Owen, and it was called Smashing Times. I think that was the name of the book, but it was about the smashing times period of the suffragette movement. So during the suffragette times in England and in Ireland, the suffragettes had a campaign of going around and breaking the windows or smashing the windows of public buildings where they were excluded from. So women were excluded from these buildings, and they would smash the windows. So we liked that idea of smashing windows or smashing barriers, not literally, metaphorically. Yeah. And we liked that phrase, smashing times. So that's where it came from.
I like it. I guess, well, we were definitely run over time. Okay. I guess there's not much to say. Thanks for TheatreMaker for inviting us to be on, and if anyone's listening, donate to TheatreMaker because they need the funds. They're artists and they need to get paid.
Thank you very much to Mairead and Mary. Another great conversation there about power structures in the arts. Please take a moment, as Mairead said, to share our broadcast on social media, tag your friends and colleagues, and let folks know how they can help us keep the conversation going. Pledge your support to us at TheatreMaker.ie/donate. Just a massive thank you to you both, Mary and Mairead. Thank you so much for joining us on the programme.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Right.
We're going to be taking a short break now, but before being joined at 5 p.m. by Joseph Clough for an open talk about imposter syndrome in the arts. We'll be back momentarily. You are very welcome back to the Keep the Conversations Going festival. At TheatreMaker here, we have put in the hours. Here is TheatreMaker's impact in numbers. We've created 98 hours, 16 minutes and 10 seconds of content. In Irish Theatre this week, we've made 14 episodes. Altogether, that's 5 hours, 38 minutes and 11 seconds. The average ITTW show clocks in at 26 minutes. And all of you have viewed ITTW 40,208 times. For Stage Door Live, we've made 31 episodes. That's 51 hours, 35 minutes, and 9 seconds. The average SDL episode clocks in at around 1 hour, 39 minutes, and 51 seconds. And SDL has been viewed 64,799 times. All of our video content has 88,788 views on Facebook, 20,904 views on YouTube, and 9,878 views on Twitter. We've featured 157 artists, art workers, producers, directors, and other creatives. And we here at TheatreMaker have helped organizations create just over 36 hours of content. Up next, we have Joseph Clough coming live from California, the renowned hypnotist and life coach. His mission is to help each person achieve their full potential. He incorporates a unique combination of advanced techniques of neuro-linguistic programming with timeline therapy, TM, and clinical hypnotherapy, and has worked with celebrities and professional athlete clients around the world. Joseph will hold an open talk about imposter syndrome and breaking down some perceived boundaries we can all create for ourselves in the arts. This is one that I am looking forward to. We loved having you all on board to watch our marathon stream throughout the day. Don't forget that we are hoping to keep the conversation going throughout the festival and beyond. In this, we're asking you to donate money if you can. We really appreciate all the donations received so far and hope everyone is seeing the important work we want to continue. Don't forget to leave comments and suggestions on our socials, and please donate at TheatreMaker.ie/donate. Thank you all again for your support, but now, Joseph Clough.
Hey, how are we today? So first of all, thank you for having me here. It's super exciting to be a part of this kind of opportunity because it just means that we can help one another, help TheatreMaker, and get everything out there into the world. Now, today we'll be talking about conquering the imposter syndrome in arts. Now, one aspect is what is actually imposter syndrome. You probably know it. It's usually thinking about what other people think of you as in the arts, as an actor, actress, and so on, where we get into a place where we start to self-analyze. We start to kind of get a little bit too much in our head, and we start to think about what people think. What if we fail? What if we get rejected? What if we don't perform? And then suddenly that anxiety, the worries, the fears, and the doubts start to creep in to our performance. Whether we don't overtly show it across to everybody, but within, we're actually communicating those worries and doubts. In fact, just so you know this, 93% of all communication, in other words, everything that we're communicating to those people that we're talking to or when we're performing, is unconscious. It's an unconscious process. It's tonality, it's your physiology. 7% is the words that you say. So we've got to really remember that 7% is the words. So what else are we communicating? So that, in a way, is imposter syndrome. It's how we think about ourselves, how we compare ourselves to other people. Now, you might be wondering who I actually am. So as I was introduced, my name is Joseph Clough. And there was a time in my life when I felt super, super anxious. I dropped out of school or college and I struggled. I really doubted myself. And I went on a journey to try to figure out the secrets of the mind so I could let go of my own self-limiting beliefs and negative thoughts and blushing and anxiety and all those kind of things. And along the way, I stumbled into doing what I do. I learned how to let go of my issues, and now I help lots of people around the world. Podcasts and so on has been downloaded over 10 million times, and I've actually worked with quite a few directors and actors in the industry. And the common thing that I've noticed is that everyone in the industry of performing arts in a way experiences this imposter syndrome. In some ways, it can be good because it keeps us on our toes. It keeps us not thinking that we're the best and keeping our ego in check. It kind of causes us to go, okay, who am I? I need to check in myself. But sometimes it gets way out of control. And especially in the last year or so, when there has been more scarcity of opportunities, we can start to doubt ourselves. We can start to doubt our potentiality. But we got to get into the mindset of what creates the imposter syndrome. You see, we know what imposter syndrome is. It's comparing ourselves to other people, comparing ourselves to what we can and cannot do, if we're capable of it, and those fears, worries, doubts, and anxieties. But if you just focus on the anxiety, if you just focus on your symptoms, the things that you feel in the imposter syndrome, it will mean that you won't possibly let go of the imposter syndrome. You see, imposter syndrome is a byproduct of something. It's a byproduct of how we experience the world. It's a byproduct of our belief systems and all of the inner parts of our reality. And if we focus on the belief that we have about ourselves, that can create the imposter syndrome. That can create the fear of failure. That can create the fear of what people think about ourselves or about ourselves. The fear of not being enough, the fear of, am I going to be able to get that gig, or am I going to perform well once I get it? Am I going to impress people and deliver what needs to be done? That is a ton of energy right there. There's a ton of expectation. And that starts to create almost like an identity complex, a limiting set of beliefs. And the beliefs will dictate how you feel and how you act. And then if you maybe don't perform, because maybe we've got that limiting belief, we weren't the best at our game, we were communicating some worries, doubts, and anxieties, and let's just say we don't get the result that we really, really want, it becomes a feedback loop. It becomes a feedback loop to that old limiting belief of that imposter syndrome. So rather focusing on those worries and doubts in what you feel and what shows up in your reality, we've got to focus on that deeper aspect of our belief systems. The beliefs make up our world. You see, we take in all this information and we try to filter it out. We try to, and there's unconsciously, by the way, we filter it out by our beliefs, our values, our personality types, our past experiences. So in other words, maybe you were told that you didn't perform that great. Now we take it on the inside and maybe start to believe it. It becomes like a little thought virus. But that virus in our mind, the worries and the doubts start to grow, and then it leads up to that belief system. So maybe in our past, we've been told that we weren't as good as we should have been. Maybe it was just a self-judgment. Maybe there was a significant event that led to that, and that starts to deepen the imposter syndrome. And the imposter syndrome then has a life of its own. It's no longer just something what someone said. We start to believe in it. And since our belief systems about ourselves and about the world is an unconscious process, that is why we use therapeutic techniques to let go of the imposter syndrome, to let go of those worries and the doubts by focusing on the beliefs that you have, the beliefs which make up your world. Because the belief systems will actually dictate our capacity in how we perform, how resourceful we are. And then obviously that goes into the things that we do when we're performing or when we're doing what we have to do in the industry. But if we have that limiting belief and that therefore shrinks our capacity, and therefore the things that we do aren't as great and powerful as we know logically we have the talent and the insights, if it is shrunken down, it will just then produce the results not to our liking. And then those results actually feed back to that belief system. But imagine with me for a moment, what if we had an unstoppable self-certainty in our experience of who we are in this world? What if you just felt confident and competent? So we're not talking about overconfidence, but you felt absolutely confident and competent in the way that you show up. If you felt a total sense of peace where you could recall the information that you need, where you can really embrace yourself in that moment. Well, of course, that belief system about yourself in doing so will then expand your capacity. It will expand your resourcefulness, your ability to pull things out and get what you really want out of doing what you need to do. And therefore, the results that you get will obviously be better because now we're in a place of self-certainty, knowing that we're enough, knowing that we're capable, knowing that we have all the ability, consciously and unconsciously. It will then expand the capacity, expand how we act, and then the results will just keep on reaffirming. So when I work with people in the industry of the arts, I try to get them to focus not on what they experience. And it's a good tool to have to actually be aware of that because it will lead you to the truth. It will lead you to getting to that core identity conflict or a belief system. So see the worries and the doubts and the imposter syndrome as a lead in to find out what really needs to be solved. You see, when we get into the imposter syndrome, what else do we do? Well, we compare ourselves to other people. We compare ourselves to where they are, and therefore we feel usually, because we don't usually compare ourselves to people who are not where we want to be, we compare ourselves where we want to be, and we don't have that experience yet. So therefore, it's beyond ourselves, and we start to feel that level of scarcity. Why can I not have that opportunity? I've put in the work, I've done all these things, and then suddenly you feel more loss, more like an imposter. So if you want to be able to start to let go of the comparison conflict, what I call, when we are focusing on all what other people do, we've got to focus on what we've done better. Not beyond ourselves, but how we were from last week, how we were from a month ago, how we were from a year ago. You see, if you compare yourself and get yourself out of the perception of what other people are doing and actually focus upon your own game and your own attributes and your own qualities, therefore you are now comparing yourself to where you were and where you were further back. And that means you can learn from it. You can learn from your experience and take those learnings as you go off into new opportunities. So if we're going to get out of the imposter syndrome, we've got to stop focusing on what other people are doing, unless, of course, we are modeling the excellence. We're understanding how they got to that place. But if we're coming from a place of worry, doubts, anxieties, and scarcities, because we are comparing ourselves, that's where we have to take our attention on the inside, not on them, but on the inside, to learn from our past, how we've improved, how we've grown. Because even if people have said things which, let's just say, are non-complimentary, that we didn't perform enough, of course, that can become a part of that conflict about, are we worthy, are we deserving? To one point, we've got to not pay attention to other people's opinions. We can understand the learnings from it. But if we're so immersed in what other people think of how we should be, you're going to start to lose yourself. You're going to start to lose the identity and that creativity of who you are. So sometimes we've got to refuse to buy into other people's opinions, even as an industry, because how many beliefs are there about how hard it is in the industry? Now, if we just think of all the times that we've, say, failed or not got what we wanted, or we see and hear everyone saying how hard it is, sometimes we can negate those people who are doing the good and great things. Even though this year or two has been pretty crazy hard, we want to make sure that we're going for the learning. We're going for looking for the example of what can be done. Because when we start to go there in our mind, we're looking for the opportunity. Your mind, your neurology, whatever you focus on, your brain is geared and wired up to look for more of the same. That is why, say, for example, you want to buy a new car, you love the car, you see the car of your dreams, and then suddenly you see it everywhere in your reality. Or sometimes if you learn a new word, you see that word pop up everywhere because your brain is geared up to focus on what you look for, where your attention is. So if our attention is thinking about what other people think, if our attention is on that worries and the doubts and the fears and the anxieties, what's the brain going to do? Neurologically, it's going to seek out the same feelings because it doesn't know the difference. In fact, if we consider what imposter syndrome is, we don't like it. It doesn't feel very good. Our body is producing something which comes with the anxiety, worries, and doubts, with all the fears, the comparison conflict, the identity conflict, the scarcity. Why would our body do this? Why would what I would say the unconscious mind, but let's just say the whole mind and body, why would it do that? Well, we've got to get into intentions. What is the intention behind limiting thoughts that maybe I'm not enough? Or what if I get rejected? What if I cannot perform? Well, it's a safety mechanism. It's a safety mechanism, but it's just grown out of control. As an example, think of a phobia. Now, we all know phobias do not really keep us safe. They're usually this extreme reaction which causes us to not feel in control. But why does the body do it? Well, it thinks that that thing is scary, that we're going to get hurt, but logically we know different. But it's the exact same thing with imposter syndrome. Our body, our neurology, has been geared up, wired up to think that something could go wrong. That what if we do fail? What if we don't get what we want? And therefore, where do we stay? Not our comfort zone. It's our familiar zone. We just focus on where we are. And although it's not very pleasant, because that's why it's not the comfort zone, it's something about our neurology that thinks it's actually safe for us. It thinks that it's safer to be where we are in this imposter syndrome compared to maybe going for our goals and our dreams, going for what we want out of life. So if we are able to change, if you really want to let go of any thoughts of imposter syndrome, you've got to remember that only you can change this. It's not up to other people. It's not up to the industry to change. Although, yes, we should start to work in the industry and start promoting, obviously, the mental wellness and esteem for people in the industry. But if you're to let go of your own unconscious imposter syndrome, the worries, doubts, and anxieties, we've got to take responsibility for who we are. We've got to take responsibility for what is happening with inside our system. Even if someone said some mean things to us in the past, maybe it was totally unwarranted. Maybe it was for the best of intentions to help us grow. Maybe there was a significant emotional event where we did not perform and it created that conflict. Even though those external things happened, if you want to really let go of this, we've got to assume the responsibility. We've got to assume the control back, and also realize that your unconscious mind, the part of you which runs this, not just the imposter syndrome, but the belief about ourselves in who we are and what we can do. We've got to get in touch with that part and also realize that it's trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you safe. It's just doing it in an unwarranted and inappropriate way, a way that is not serving us. And we also said that, look, most of the time when we're in the imposter syndrome, we're focusing on what we don't want. We're focusing on what other people are doing. And that creates the anxiety. If you think of what anxiety is, it's focusing on all the things that you don't want. That's imposter syndrome too. Now, if you're going to change, you got to focus on what you do want. You got to train up your mind, whether it be through things like hypnosis or just visualization. You've got to be able to change the attention. You've got to change the flow. When you change the flow of your thinking, in other words, doing like the reverse anxiety process, which is focusing on all the things you do want rather than what you don't want. It's almost as if anxiety and imposter syndrome is getting into a car, opening up a satellite navigation system, and putting in all the locations and destinations you don't want to go to. Now, of course, that would be madness. We'd never do that. We'd never want to go to all the other locations and places in the area that we're in to hopefully eventually get to where we want to be. It is madness. But that is what imposter syndrome is. That is what the anxiety is. It's focusing on all the things you don't want to hopefully get yourself to where you want to be. So if we want to do this properly, we've got to focus on your destination. We've got to focus on what you want and nurture that. When you go there in the mind, you're going to start to go there in the body. You're going to start to train up your unconscious mind. You're going to start to focus on who you are, where you want to be, and learning from your past, allowing us to get back into that connection. You see, you have all the resources, all the ability. You know logically that you've got the skill set. You've got the trade. You've got the passion. You've got the purpose. But it's just that unconscious part of us. And we've got to educate that part to be able to grow, to be able to realize that what it's doing is not protecting you. Therefore, your belief in the unstoppable you, the belief system that you're capable, that you're worthy. Ask yourself, what would happen if you did have that, I'm worthy, I'm deserving, I'm capable, I am more than enough? I think not only will it let go of the imposter syndrome, but the chances are it's going to up-level every aspect of your life. So, when we start to train up the mind to focus on what we want, we've then got to take action upon it. Are you spending the right amount of time to get yourself in the right place before you enter the experience of the arts and theatre and so on? Are you spending enough time with yourself in the beginning of your day to really make sure that you're in your peak state? Are you putting your mind where it needs to go, focusing on what you want? Because if you're not, I really suggest doing so. I really suggest getting yourself, nurture who you are and where you want to be, and also educate your unconscious mind. That's what we've got to do. We've got to know what we want and take the action upon it, and really start to remember why we got into doing what we're doing. Remembering the purpose and the passion of the joy of the art. Because as I said, when I've worked with people in the past, and these are award-winning directors and actors, they've all experienced this, even when they're successful. In fact, sometimes that success will actually increase it, let alone the scarcity of not being where we want. Because when we get to where we want, we've got to actually start thinking that maybe I don't want to go backwards. I don't want to lose myself from where I am. So we all experience it, but it's about how you deal with it, how you resolve it, how you can get your neurology, your mind, your body to focus on what you need to do, to focus on your empowered belief system. Ask yourself this. If you think of any symptoms that you go through, the worries, the doubts, the fears, or the anxieties, as you just think about that, what belief do you have about yourself? Now, on one hand, you might go, yeah, I've got all the resources, I've got all the talent, but what about that other part of you? What belief do you have about yourself when you start to get into that mindset? And whatever you come up with, that's what you've got to take action on. So in other words, forget about the imposter syndrome, forget about the worries and the doubts and the anxieties. Focus on that core belief that has maybe been collected for our past experience. But imagine now if you could turn that belief round, where that belief system was actually the opposite. So let's just say if you didn't feel like you were worthy or deserving or the fear of failure and so on, imagine if it was the absolute opposite. What would happen to the imposter syndrome? What would happen to the anxiety when you know that you're enough? Where you know that you're capable? Where you come from that place of abundance? I don't think the imposter syndrome could actually exist. I don't think those worries and doubts can exist. Even if the world goes through something, even if there's a scarcity of opportunities, I think when you turn that belief upside down and you start to go into the belief that I am worthy and I am deserving and I'm enough and I'm capable, you will start to buy into your own story. You'll buy into where you're heading and what you want to be doing out of life. That's what we've got to be doing. We've got to get our mindset in the cultivation of who you are, not other people, but who you are and where you want to be heading. So go ahead in a very simplistic and easy way. If you have an opportunity to do so, I want you just to close your eyes for a second, just for a few minutes. Just for a few minutes. What I'd like you to do, I want you to think about where you want to be. Not what you don't want, but consider the makeup of how you would like to be. The type of, almost as if you were seeing another you in front of you. And if you gave that other you all the empowering belief systems, all the resources, all the failings, all the education, all the assumption of responsibility, all the comparing yourself from where you were yesterday to last year and so on. Really focusing and nurturing that you, where that you has all the self-certainty. Now, if you imagine that you going off out into the future, acting and reacting in a way that serves you best. You see, your unconscious mind, as you imagine that, will start to be educated. And it sounds silly at first, but the brain finds it very hard to distinguish between what is in the mind and what is in the outside. So I want your unconscious mind, even now as I speak to you in this with just your eyes closed, I want your unconscious mind to begin to run through into the future with those beliefs and thoughts where you feel totally empowered, where you feel totally free of the imposter, where you feel so self-certain and see that you exactly how you want to be, in a way that will cause you not only to achieve what you desire, but also have the learnings, a new safety mechanism where you can expand that comfort zone, where you can go out there and take the massive action, where you can start to enjoy the process, even in a scarcity. You see, some people will fall down from the challenge, but see the challenge as an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to challenge yourself. And with your eyes closed still, I think you may remember that going into the arts was about the challenge. It was about losing yourself in the experience and expanding your capabilities and your traits and really doing what you want to be doing, going fully immersive into the experience. So on the one hand, the imposter syndrome in the arts is very, very big. However, you have the superpower of being so creative that you can start to paint pictures in your mind in the positive, in how you would like to be, where you act and react. And once you start to go there in your mind, you'll actually start to retrain it. So even with your eyes closed, continue to go on the journey of success, rising up to the opportunity, learning from the experience, allowing it for you to grow because of it. That's all we've got to do in the beginning. We've just got to focus on what needs to be focused upon. So when you're ready, you can go ahead and start to open your eyes. Now, although it's very small and simple the time that we have together, if I could offer one piece of advice, or a few pieces of advice, of course, we don't want to be focusing on the imposter syndrome anymore. In other words, the symptoms. You want to focus on that core limiting, maybe belief system we have about ourselves, which creates the imposter syndrome. But even more than that, you want to be able to take your mind with the great artistic mind that you have, because you have that trait inbuilt within you. That's you. You have the skill set. You have the creativity. I wish I had that. You literally have the solution sitting in front of you when you start to go there in your mind. And this has been proven time and time again in studies, that when you start to focus on what you want and you begin to hallucinate or imagine or go on a hypnotic journey, whatever it may be best for you, you will start to retrain your neurology. You'll start to educate yourself. You'll start to learn and then recognize that that learning of realizing of who you can become will be your biggest instigator of your success in the future. So rather focusing on what we don't want, rather focusing what other people are saying and doing, rather focusing on our past. And I know I'm saying a very simplistic, like it's easy. I know it takes time. I've been doing this for the last 20 years. But ultimately, if we are going to change, we've got to start to apply this. We've got to learn. We've got to disconnect. We've got to be less focused on what other people are saying and doing and focus upon ourselves and where you're heading. To know your outcome, to know your dream, to take massive and inspired action, but to also be flexible in how you adapt in the industry. Look for those who are doing the good and great things to model, to notice how they do what they do, because there's always going to be someone out there who has overcome what you've gone through, what you're going through, that you can start to model. That becomes the inspiration for us. That becomes something where we can aspire to, not for that comparison conflict, not to focus on, oh, why are they over there and not me? We've got to focus on who we can learn from, who we can grow from. So when we start to apply that, if you can, I promise you this, if you can dedicate 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, as you wake up, as you get into your day, to start to hallucinate in your mind how you'd like your day to go, how you want to show up, why you're doing what you're doing. Because once again, we usually focus on our goals and outcomes or what people are thinking or saying and doing as our comparison and our fears, that's beyond us. We're focusing on everything beyond us. Focus on what you can do right here. Focus where you can go in your mind, because that is the thing that you can start with. Before entering the day of the crazy fastness of the world, start to put your attention on who you want to be, how you want to show up. Start to hallucinate the way that you'll act and react. And that'll be pre-teaching your unconscious mind to let go of the imposter syndrome. That's all you've got to do to get going. It really, really is. Therefore, once you do so, you'll be starting to create new beliefs. The neural networks in the brain will start to go down the new pathways. And once you start to do that, the brain will start to get those beliefs to open up your capacity, to open up how you act and react in your environment. And therefore, the results that you get are going to really feed back the new identity. And the other thing that I really love to do is to start to get in that key state. Every morning, start to radiate the state, because you, in the industry, you step into so many different roles. Even if, as a director, you are going there where they are in the story. If you're a writer, you go there in the mind. So we've got to go there in our mind when it comes to our self-esteem. There are so many people who struggle and fall off because of this, because they get into that imposter syndrome. Start to reconnect with who you are. Start to understand why you're doing this, where you want to be heading. Assume that responsibility. Go there in the mind, and therefore you will go there in the body. So every single day, take that 10 minutes to cultivate yourself, to recognize the identity and the beliefs that we hold about ourselves, and start to disconnect from them. Start to welcome them to a degree and realize that they were only formulated because of our past experience. They were only formulated maybe because of significant events, or formulated because someone did something, or how we acted, how we reacted. But realize the belief that you have about yourself, which creates the imposter syndrome, is not who you are. It is something that you've been running. It is something that you've been experiencing, which feels like an identity, which feels like an uncontrollable or unstoppable thing. But that belief, which creates the imposter, is not who you are. You see, deeper down, I think we're just pure potentiality. And I think you do as well, because I feel like with that creativity, with the immersion into experiences, when painting them in your mind and really going all in on something, in a performance, in any part of the industry, it just means that you have that. So when you really get into the role of who you are and realize the belief is not who you are, you'll actually start to change your subjective reality, because that belief will dictate how you perceive the world around you. But if we take a look behind the curtains of the belief which is being run, like, what if I fail, or what if I'm not enough? What if I don't get X, Y, Z? What if I get rejected? Those kind of beliefs, once we look beneath the surface and that positive intention is trying to keep you safe, that is when you decide and go, look, this is not protecting me. I'm going to start to educate my mind, dissociate from the belief, and start to create a belief which will serve me, a belief which will actually help me in becoming who I want to be, the belief that will serve me in the situations and rise up to the challenge and do what has to be done. When you start to dissociate and assume responsibility, I promise you, your brain will start to get back in control of things. You'll start to rein it in and get it to serve you in a way that makes you feel good. in a way that causes you to shine, but see it as an opportunity to learn within the challenge. See it as an opportunity to get better, to become stronger, to be more powerful than you could ever imagine. Because you are worthy ultimately. You are deserving, you are capable, you've got the skill set. You've just got to retrain that little part of you, which has that little doubt, that little voice on the inside. That's the voice we've got to turn around and get into supporting us. And that is where we start to visualize more. If you look into so many great artists, so many great performers, the most successful ones usually go there in the mind of how they want to be in any endeavor, and they'll start to produce that result because they're focusing on what they want. And wherever your attention goes, your body does as well. Your neurology does. So let's focus on what we really want, forgetting about the outside noise of the other people's opinions, even forgetting about some aspects of the industry, the scarcity, the doubts aspect to it. I remember hearing a conversation, and it was actually in the entrepreneurial world when the things were going really crazy, economic crisis. I don't know, it was like a decade or so ago. And one of the people said that they're just going to refuse to participate in the noise of the scarcity and the fear. Now, to me, that is the attitude that we have to. I know it's hard, I know it's tricky because the noise is pretty loud right now. But if we're going to change the industry to make it better than ever before, we've got to cut through that noise, refuse to participate, and start to participate in who you want to be and what you want to bring to the industry. That is why we're here. That is what we want to be doing. We want to be able to participate in the beautiful, artistic creation. And that is who we are as well. We are that artistic creation. So let's be artistic in creating what we truly desire. In other words, who you are, your beliefs, your feelings, your thoughts. And then when we do that as a community, you will start to see the world in a whole different place. So remember, imposter syndrome is almost very real, but also very illusionary at the same time because it's subjective. It is ran through limiting beliefs based on our past experiences. But nevertheless, it is an illusion, a story that we buy into. And now we've got to create and buy into a new story. We want to educate our brain, educate our belief system, so we can truly experience and make an impact in the world, an impact in the industry, because that is what has to be done. So I think I am coming to the end of my time. I presume so. So with that, I think I'll leave you with, when you start to assume that responsibility and actually educate yourself in the mind and body, you will start to transform.
Thank you so very much, Joseph. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me.
No, it's just an empowering and intriguing talk. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, my friend.
Great. Thanks again for joining us. Joseph has a program on conquering imposter syndrome. Find out more at Clough, that's CLOUGH.info/power. That's josephclough.info/power. You can also download his free hypnosis app at hypnosis.app.com. We'll be taking a quick dinner break now, after which we'll start a new stream for our last events of the day. We are looking forward to the sector panel discussion led by Thomas Conway, joined by Romy Cruanas and Dr. Paul Hafferty. Our first day will end with Annie Ryan and a chat about being our own best pals, followed by a guided meditation through Yoga Nidra, which should get us all ready for a deep sleep. So have the pillows ready. Show us how much you've enjoyed the first day of the Keep the Conversations Going festival by pledging your support to us at TheatreMaker.ie/donate. We will see you shortly.